Respected representatives of the municipalities, dear colleagues, good morning and welcome at today's webinar on the topic of inclusive disaster risk management, emergency responses to vulnerable groups. To all of you that you have already participated in the previous webinars, you already know that this is our 5th webinar and the last webinar in this series on the social approaches which are promoted within the project Enhancing Local Capacities to Implement the Agenda 2030 and the Leave No One Behind principle, implemented by NALAS and supported by GIZ. This, however, is not the last opportunity for you to engage with the project and with the social approaches, and you will learn about these opportunities further down the webinar. Before we continue with today's program, let's go over some of the technical details. Can we share the slide with the technical details? Thank you, Boran. Translation, as you already are familiar, is available in Albanian, Macedonian, and Serbian. To select your preferred language, check on the bottom of your screen in the Zoom control taskbar. You will see a small globe sign with interpretation on it. So there, if you click there, you can select the language that you need the translation to. This webinar will be recorded and will be available for you and your colleagues that were not able to attend this webinar today to listen to it, to see it after the webinar after a certain time. This event is organized in a webinar format, so you will not be able to directly turn on your camera and microphone and share your comments, thoughts, questions. But this doesn't mean that we don't want your active participation. On the contrary, we encourage you to share information in the chat, to share your questions in the Q&A section, which again, you will see at the bottom of your screen in the Zoom controls taskbar. So feel free throughout the webinar to share your experiences, questions, and then our expert speakers, panelists will provide you with the necessary answers and discussion. Make sure that you have the latest version of Zoom, because sometimes that creates problems if you cannot see the signs below about the interpretation or the Q&A. Probably it's because you don't have the latest Zoom version. You have the link here. I'm sure it will show up in the chat in a minute. So it's quick process, download the latest version and probably everything will be fixed. If during the webinar you experience certain technical problems, you cannot hear the speakers or you cannot see the videos, try to leave the event and re-enter. And most often that will solve the technical issues. So I hope that you will all be able to enjoy this webinar without any technical challenges. For those of you that don't know me already, my name is Nikica Kusinikova and I'm part of the team that supports NALAS in creating these webinars, these e-learning courses and the learning opportunities for you and your municipalities on how to incorporate the inclusive disaster risk management that serves vulnerable groups and in that way supports the social inclusion in your community. Because as you are all aware, our region is faced often with disasters. They're quite familiar events. And often the municipalities are on the forefront of the disaster risk management. Disasters cause stagnation in the development and they create often massive economic and human damage, mostly due to the vulnerabilities of the people. However, not all groups in our municipalities are equally damaged, affected by the disasters. Often, those that are left behind, those that are anyway socially excluded, such as poor communities, specific groups at social risk, are often those that feel the effects of the disasters even more than the rest of the population and face huge, even more exclusion and poverty based on this. For this reason, it is very important that the disaster risk management approach in your communities takes care of those that are left behind, that you include their needs and their vulnerabilities in the planning, prevention, and mitigation measures. And this is exactly what our experts and practitioners will bring to us today. I'm very looking forward to learn more, because for me, this is also a rather new topic. So I hope that you will be also inspired to take active part in this webinar, to learn more about this issue, eventually participate in the e-learning course to learn more on how you can implement this approach of inclusive disaster risk management in your municipalities. So let's start with giving the opportunities to our host to address the audience. Today's webinar is hosted by two associations, the Association of Local Autonomy Albania and the Association of Albanian Municipalities. With us today, we have the executive directors of both associations. So I will invite Ms. Adalina Farici, the executive director of the Association of Local Autonomy Albania, to address us first, and then I will invite Mr. Agron Hajimali, the executive director of the Association of Albanian Municipalities. Ms. Farici, please welcome our guests today.
Hello, Nikita, Boran, and Petri. Thank you for this opportunity to be here with you today. And hello, everyone. Welcome on today's webinar. And I'm Adelina Farici, the Executive Director of Association of Local Autonomy of Albania. Let me to do short introduction about our association. Our association has joined recently with NALAS, and we are happy about this, because this gives us the opportunity to expand the collaboration with NALAS and to create a network with our colleagues, and of course to share our experiences with our members. Today's webinar, Inclusive Disaster Risk Management, is a great opportunity that is given to everyone today, especially to the municipality staff, to expand their knowledge and to exchange their experiences. Today, I want to share with you shortly our association experience in relation to the emergencies, because our situation is we are faced with the strong earthquake in Albania in 2019, and after that we faced with COVID-19, as we all world faced. And this situation gives us a strong role to create a network with municipalities, and to create a good contact with municipalities and key actors in central government. This situation, Association of Local Autonomy of Albania implemented a project
Automat Local në Shqipëri ka implementuar një projekt për emergjencat civile.
During the implementation of the project, we noticed that the municipalities were faced the lack of financial and infrastructural resources, difficulties in the coordination between key actors, and the lack of local plans, and the identification of risk or a lack of risk assessment. And in this project, we finalized producing a document which recommended some topics for for municipalities, local governments, and central governments, because
Reato qendrore. Sepse në Shqipëri ne kemi Agjencinë Nacionale për Mbrojtjen Civile. Në këtë dokument të ndarë me të gjithë bashkitë dhe të gjitha aktorët qendror, është një dokument i mirë sepse bashkitë janë të parapara me këtë situatë. Pas kësaj, ne kemi mbështetur mundësinë për komunat apo bashkitë, donatorët dhe për të parë se si ne mund të ndihmojmë.
Do the documents, and we asked that the central government to include in the to do the sub law for the new law that we have for civil protection. And I think it's important for us to hear today from experts how can we manage this situation, and to share with each others the good experiences. I think it's important, and for our role and for municipalities, and at the end we help municipalities to increase and improve the standards and services for municipalities. Thank you for this day that you organized this webinar, and I want to thank you, Nalas, for collaboration and for including our association in different projects. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Faritzi, for giving us the perspective of the Albanian municipalities. Now I will invite Mr. Hajimali to also address our participants. Can you just unmute your microphone, please?
Okay, sorry. Mirëmëngjesit të gjithëve.
Hello to everyone. Risk management in the approach has been welcomed by us because it was an immediate need historically, but COVID showed us.
Boran.
I may
Hello.
ask you to continue in English because we have difficulties with the translation from Albanian to the other languages.
Okay, yeah. Good morning. Personally and on behalf of our association.
Agron, you need okay, so now it's the translation is going on. Okay, thank you very much.
Vazhdon përkthimi, në rregull. Faleminderit.
English, Boran.
English, please.
In English, please.
Okay, good. This project is very good for me. I will provide a full support to implement this project. I think so because historically the risk disaster management has been a problem for every country, for our society, but the pandemic situation show that institution, every country, every organization, everyone must be prepared because we are part of the risk in our life. Risk is life is going parallel with our life. In this context, we need to be fully prepared. We have not to neglect any process, any steps, anyone, because we need to be total supportive and then inclusive. Shortly, I've said just two experiences regarding the risk disaster management, repairing work of Albania Association of Municipalities. I have here a manual which introduces the role of municipalities, how to react in case of risk disaster management. This manual is very well accepted from staff of the municipality because it introduces every step, every moment which the municipality must be prepared for risk disaster management. From other sides, I've noticed that we have a lack of the culture, of lack of understanding well regarding the concept, regarding the element of the risk, regarding element of disaster, regarding connotation of the group of vulnerables, and so on. From other side, I've noticed that in the local level, they need so much to know regarding management of risk situation and to know the cycle of management for risk disaster management. Association of Municipalities have been implemented a project in the Colonial municipalities in the cross-border cooperation with some Greek partners. And we have assisted Colonial municipality to regarding inclusive risk disaster management. Shortly, to say you just some points from this situation, aiming to be understood it better in which status, which position we are in the local level. We can share for all of you the reports prepared from Colonia municipality, but the report show there are some factors, some elements that are missing in local level. For example, the institutional capacities. There are some lack of the municipalities in terms of cooperation with other institutions for providing administrative and public services for this vulnerable group. We know very well the status and the position of municipalities, which are not so strong in providing public support, good public services for all the population. But these vulnerable groups need more attention. The municipalities complain about the administrative procedure, but from other side as well, the vulnerable group are very complained about the roles of municipality regarding administrative procedure. They need to pay to be more involved. They need to go to the municipality to get any for fulfilling any needs. The municipality is not in such position to provide such needs to the house of this vulnerable group. But from other side, municipalities complain about the financial source. That's we know very well. They are not in a very good condition, but they need more support from the central government to support this vulnerable group. But overall, there are a lot of problems, but we need to change our culture, our mentality, how to treat, how to involve, how to be supportive for administrative and public services for this vulnerable group. I wanted to stop here just with two experiences from our association preparing this manual and assisting one municipality in the practice. But in generally, I think we need to work much more, and I hope with SORI we will do some more progressive step toward this situation and to improve and to have new concept, new culture, new mentality to be introduced in the local level. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hajimali, for sharing also the resources that you have created to support the municipalities in the disaster risk management. And we will hear afterwards in the section on with the presentations an example from the municipality of Tirana. So thank you very much for giving us this introduction. As I mentioned at the beginning, this project and these webinars are supported with by GIZ, and they wouldn't have been possible without the support of GIZ. We are very happy to have with us today a representative from GIZ, Mr. Petrit Sopiani, to address the audience. So Petrit, good morning to you too, and please welcome our participants today.
Thank you, Nikita, and greetings to everyone. I'm here on behalf of the regional project, Social Rights for Vulnerable Groups, that is implemented by GIZ. And frankly, I would wish all present here a very warm welcome in today's webinar that we are organizing together with NALAS and other implementing partners. Thank you very much for your time to joining us here. And we know that this is a very busy period of the year, but I hope that we will be able to share with you and that you can profit from this webinar. My name, as introduced by Nikita, it's Petrit Sopiani. I'm advisor for the disaster risk management thematic packages within this project, SORI project. I am based in Pristina in Kosovo, but as you know, and as it was introduced, we are a larger team. We are represented in the region, in the Western Balkans, and we cover different countries with this project. Let me just shortly give you some insights on how we initiated this webinar. In the past years, within GIZ project and through different partnerships that we have with different organizations, we have piloted different social approaches aiming to reach and support the most vulnerable groups in the respective municipalities and in various contexts. These approaches that we have implemented, we try to catch and to preserve the best practices. The disaster risk management, even though it was introduced initially by our partner organization NALAS, as they had previously various experiences with this topic, we have together integrated social vulnerability and inclusion context in the disaster risk management in this training package that will start with this webinar today. And I'm very happy, and it is my pleasure that together we will try to scale up this approach and this aspect of introducing disaster risk management with inclusive context. So today we will try to discuss together with you the potentials how to implement this jointly. We have joined forces and to support interest of the municipalities in implementing this approach successfully. And together with NALAS, we will support all your efforts within state and non-state actors in inclusion of vulnerable groups in this concept. So the first step that we would like to take is successful scaling up. And this is with this webinar that we aim to present what an inclusive disaster risk management is, and also to inform you about the benefits of having implemented within your community, within your municipality. Let me just shortly also to use this opportunity and thanks and give acknowledgement to our partners that we work with to achieve this. First of all, I would like to thank the host that enabled this webinar. Of course, NALAS as our strategic partner throughout the years. And of course, I would like to especially thank the practitioners that are here today. And two of them from the municipality of Tirana and municipality of Kraljevo, if I'm not wrong, in Serbia, will present today and share with us their best practices in disaster risk management. And together with them, we try to compile the methodology that is feasible and will be adjustable in your municipality context. So let me stop here. I truly hope that you will find this webinar very interesting and informative, but most of all, it will motivate you to join us in our next step to scaling up this approach and to integrating the social aspect within disaster risk management initiatives that you will have in your municipalities. Thank you very much. And Nikita, back to you. Good luck.
Thank you very much, Petrit. And now we have Boran Ivanovski from NALAS, who probably already know all of you. Boran, we have today 170 participants at the webinar, which shows that this topic is very relevant for our municipalities. So how do you see the importance of this topic and all of these social approaches that NALAS is promoting within this project?
Thank you very much, Nikita. Good morning to everyone. And I would not be very extensive in my speech today because our member associations, the representatives, Ms. Faridzi and Mr. Hajimali already present many of the activities they do, but together also with the NALAS network. And thanks to Mr. Sopiani from GIZ, who also explained what is this social approach about. But I'm really glad to see that we have 107 participants today together with us. I am welcoming all of you, most of you I'm welcoming for the 5th time. As Nikita mentioned, this is the 5th in the series of the webinars we are providing to the local governments in the Western Balkans. And for the NALAS and for the network itself, this topic of the inclusive disaster risk management is very important. And the roots of this importance is coming from the NALAS strategic plan, but also coming from the needs expressed of our member associations. Sorry, within the NALAS strategic plan, one of the strategic determination is actually development and supporting of the sustainable and resilient communities in the region of Southeast Europe. So we consider this inclusive disaster risk management and inclusion of the vulnerable groups in the all phases of the disaster risk management cycle as necessity, because if you want to implement and to establish a resilient community, you first of all, you have to think about the most vulnerable groups, the people who are most affected of the natural disasters. And the second point, which is also rooted within our strategic plan, is the inclusion. The inclusion is one of the basic principles, one of the basic values of NALAS network and the NALAS strategic plan. So altogether, this resilience, the synergy, the synergy between the resilience and the inclusion as a basic principle is providing us even more basis to support our members in the development of activities and implementation of the activities on the field related to inclusive disaster risk management. So this is the 5th webinar, but as Nikita mentioned, we are not stopping here with the sharing of the social approaches. Besides this one, we have another 4 for those who are for first time together with us. So we are working very much on the delivery of e-learning courses, which are part of our e-academy, and the first delivery of the e-learning course on Daycare Center will start on the 6th of April. But much more about these activities and other opportunities that are coming from the project for the municipalities in the Western Balkans, I will present by the end of the webinar. So this is another trigger to attract you to stay together with us for the entire webinar and to see what we are going to offer you In the meanwhile, I will put in the chat several times during the webinar link for the pre-registration of those who are interested to participate at the free e-learning course on inclusive disaster risk management that will be implemented in September. But you can express your interest even today, and to fill in the form which is available on the link I will share soon in the chat section. Once again, welcome to our 5th webinar, and I wish you all successful and pleasant webinar today. Thank you, Nikita.
Thank you very much, Boran. And
Paldies, Boran. Tanita ilustrăm një video të shkurtër se çfarë na kupton menaxhimi i rrezikut.
Video.
Rrezikut od katastrofe.
Možemo li vidjeti video?
Such as floods, cyclones, tsunamis, and earthquakes are on the rise, causing a massive loss of life and assets. This scenario is further aggravated by human activities that are adding to these risks. Though the world is more aware than ever towards preparedness to save lives and assets, there is a need to recognize that disasters have worst impact on people and communities that are poor or at risk for different reasons. Various reports suggest that during 2004 to 14, the mortality rate of people with disabilities has been 2 to 4 times greater than the non-disabled members of community. People with disabilities face unique or additional challenges during disasters, some of which is related to exclusion and barriers that already exist in society. For instance, a person with hearing impairment is likely to miss out on warning announcements through audio broadcast. Similarly, the visual warnings, symbols, and signposts that are displayed will not be accessible for a person with blindness. And during earthquakes, a person with intellectual disability will find it very stressful to cope with an unfamiliar situation in the campsite in absence of a caregiver or a family member. We need to ensure that disaster risk reduction is inclusive. This can happen only when people with disabilities are involved in all stages of disaster preparedness and response. People with disabilities must be meaningfully represented in disaster management committees. There is a need for data to be broken down in terms of age, gender, and disabilities for enabling policymakers and agencies to plan and respond effectively. Let's ask governments and organizations to make disaster risk reduction disability inclusive. This can be done by implementing the Sendai framework and the Dhaka Declaration on Disability and Disaster Risk Management. Through this, we can ensure that no one is left behind next time a disaster strikes.
Thank you, Boran, for sharing the video. And in a minute, we will hear from our expert and from the practitioners how this type of inclusive approaches in disaster risk management are being implemented in our region. As usual with our webinars, before I give the floor to our expert, we want to see what is your experience related to the inclusive disaster risk management. So we have prepared again a short quiz with 3 questions that will soon appear on your screen, question by question, related to the topic. And I will ask all of you to select the answer. The first question is: inclusion is the practice or policy of providing equal access to opportunities and resources for people who might otherwise be excluded or marginalized, such as women, children, elderly, those who have physical or mental disabilities in minority groups. Is it true or false? You can select, of course, only one answer here. And I will wait first for at least 50% of the participants to respond to the question before we reveal the answers. I will wait just a few seconds more. We already have 53% that responded. I think we can now show the results. Thank you. So majority, 95% of you gave the correct answer, which is the true definition of what is inclusion as a practice. So I think we are on a good starting point into today's webinar. Let's see now the second question, which relates to your experiences in practicing disaster risk management in your municipalities. Which of the following types of activities related to the inclusion of vulnerable groups in disaster risk reduction have been implemented by your municipality? And you can have here one or more answers, whatever is relevant for your experience. So the options are preparation of risk and hazard assessments, preparation of disaster preparedness plans, conduct of simulation and training drills, post-disaster needs assessment, all of the above mentioned, or none of the above mentioned. And again, I will leave some time for you to reflect on the question and to respond by selecting any of the options. We'll just give a few more seconds. And we can now show the results. Can we see the final? Okay. So we have 45% of you, almost half, that have engaged in preparation of disaster preparedness plans, which is again excellent, with 41% also conducted preparation of risk and hazard assessments. We see also 25%, so quarter of the participants that have implemented all of the activities above, which is actually excellent. And I will encourage all of you who have been involved in this type of activities to share your experience in the chat or in the Q&A section, and thus also contribute to the discussion and to sharing of different spectrum of experiences. And again, we have 10% of the participants that haven't implemented any of the activities, which is actually excellent, because I think that this webinar will be very valuable for you to give you guidance on where to start and how to actually incorporate step by step this approach into your municipalities. So thank you very much for participating in this question. And let's see the final third question for this quiz. Which are the stakeholders on the local level with whom you collaborate on the issues of disaster resilience of vulnerable groups of citizens? And again, you can select one or several answers. The options are municipal authorities, emergency services such as police, firefighters, ambulance, social affairs and social services departments, civil society organizations, formal and informal groups of citizens, media, private sector and academia, all of the above mentioned, and none of the above mentioned. And you're quite fast with answering, so I think that very soon we can reveal the answers. I think we can show now the responses. Again, over half of you believe that the emergency services are those, and I think to all of us it comes natural that we first think of the emergency services. Then also 51% responded municipal authorities. 42% believe that all of the above mentioned have a role to play, which is actually true. There is no correct answer, but all of these stakeholders can be involved in a different levels and with different capacities in the issues of disaster resilience of vulnerable groups. And we will discuss this further in details, especially during our panel discussion. So stay tuned to learn more about how to engage these different stakeholders in the inclusive disaster risk management. Thank you very much to all of you who participated in the in this quiz. And now we can move and hear from the experts and practitioners how the inclusive disaster risk management works and how it can be implemented in our municipalities. First, I would like to invite our expert speaker for today, Mr. Vasko Popovski, who will be also the expert leading the e-learning course. He has a long years experience in this issue, working in the region, but also in the broader global area related to this topic. So Vasko, please feel free to introduce yourself and guide us through this social approach.
Thank you, Nikica. Good morning to all from Skopje. It is a real pleasure to be part of this challenging inclusive disaster risk management resilience journey on a local level in Western Balkans. In my presentation, I will give some background on the disaster risk reduction profile and activities in Western Balkans, importance on the inclusion and of vulnerable groups of citizens in an inclusive and participatory manner in disaster risk management, as well as I will present some of the practical activities that were implemented in the region in the past, in order to again stress the importance of having disaster risk management as a business of all, as a all of society approach, in order to ensure resilience to our citizens. Western Balkans is one of the most exposed regions in Europe to various natural hazards such as floods, landslides, earthquakes, extreme weather events. And with the expected impact of the climate change and the degraded environmental situation, it is considered that these effects will be tripled. Also, Western Balkans lives in an uncertain times where the more and more disastrous events are happening on a regular basis that are also increased in frequency, intensity, and the magnitude, as well as resulting on impact on the citizens, with the vulnerable ones having the most of the impact. You can see several pictures of the previous disasters during the last decade that happened here in the region. Most biggest one were the May 2014 floods in Serbia and Bosnia and Herzegovina, with affecting the populations and economies in these countries in an unprecedented way. For example, floods in Serbia made the damages and losses to the country of $1.7 billion, which is 4.8% of their GDP. The damages in Bosnia and Herzegovina were 1.35 billion. And in Serbia, more than 125 people were drowned below the poverty line as a result of the impact of the disasters. We have on the bottom side, on the left side, is the earthquake in Albania from December 2019, affecting the cities of Durrës and Tirana and the region. We have also increased wildfires like in Northern Macedonia, but we are facing also situations where with the climate change, also we are expecting new hazardous events like these water sprouts in Albania on the Adriatic Sea. We are living time of COVID-19 pandemic, which is unprecedented uncertainty, and it is a disaster and crisis of our life, the biggest one after the Great Depression of 1930s. COVID-19 pandemic is hugely and seriously affecting our society, all aspects of socioeconomic lives, all sectors of socioeconomics areas, all aspects of everyday life, affecting the communities again, with the most vulnerable being affected the most. As of 17th of March, in Western Balkans, there are 1.1 million confirmed cases, and unfortunately, there are more than 54,000 deaths of citizens as a result of this pandemic crisis. It is their impacts are significant, and as I said, they are cascading through the impacts, influencing the resilience texture of the societies, of the communities, again, exacerbating the vulnerabilities and creating the new ones, such as the creating of the new groups of urban poor, because the COVID-19 pandemic has the strongest impact in the urban areas. For example, I will just mention several aspects of the COVID-19 pandemic crisis. In Macedonia, the projected impact in fiscal terms of the crisis for 2020 and 2021 is projected to 3.7 billion euro. We know that the Western Balkans regions are heavily relying on remittances, unfortunately, due to the pandemic crisis and global impact. They are down for 10%. Tourism in Montenegro fell for 20%. There are increased unemployment around the countries in all regions. There are increased gender inequalities with the rise of gender violence as a result of the very restrictive measures that are being implemented, like the quarantines, lockdowns, or restricted movements. Also, there is a significant loss of municipal revenues. In North Macedonia, we did the analysis on local level, where we were analyzing the fiscal services, fiscal aspects of the COVID-19 crisis, delivery of services and crisis management. And we see that practically from the second quarter of last year, the revenues drastically went down, whether the costs for crisis response were high because of the untypical services and measures and actions that the municipality implemented, for example, disinfection of public spaces and public facilities, provision of protective equipment, support to vulnerable categories, support to citizens in quarantine or in isolations. As I said, the impact on vulnerables is it's the greatest, and the impact of the municipalities can be confirmed by the participants from the municipalities. They can witness the real impact not only on the financial aspects of the municipalities and delivery services, but how the municipalities transform them to operate within this scope of the pandemic crisis, how they align their working operations to respond to the continuous delivery of services. We can see on this graph that the major impact is on local level, whether for example, one statistic done by the GFDRR was saying that 60% of fatality reported in 6 hours, and continuously the importance of the local community of the municipality is the biggest, because the municipalities are the first responders to events like this. Local response is available immediately for the local needs of the citizens on the territory, including the vulnerable groups of citizens, such can be the women, children, elderly, other vulnerable groups that can be affected, like ethnic minorities, migrants, refugees on the territory, or extremely poor, etc. Vulnerable ones are most affected for example, in tsunami in 2004, more than 70% of the victims in Banda Aceh province in Indonesia were women. In 2005, in the Hurricane Katrina, more than 60% of the victims were elderly because of the high level of flooding and inability to evacuate in a timely and effective and efficiently manner. And also in 2011, result of the consequent cascading tsunami, more than 56% of the victims were elderly because of the inability again to timely and properly evacuate to higher grounds and to escape from the disastrous impacts of the tsunami. The voices of vulnerables, they are least heard and their needs are least recognized if we are comparing with the voices and needs of other members of the communities. So here we can ask a question, how to enhance the resilience of vulnerable groups. One of the practical approaches is to mainstream this response, preparedness and response, to mainstream these activities for strengthening of their resilience through the disaster risk management. In general, disaster risk management is the application of disaster risk reduction policies and strategies to prevent new disaster risk, to reduce existing disaster risk on the territory, and to manage the residual risk. And all of this is contributing to strengthening of the resilience and reduction of the damages and losses. Disaster risk management is being implemented during the whole cycle of disasters. You can see on the left side, for example, the disaster cycle is being divided on prevention, on phases of prevention, preparedness, response, and recovery. Prevention and preparedness are before the event. Response and recovery are after disaster or crisis it's happened, so after the event, and all of them are consisting of subsequent measures and actions that should be implemented, ensuring that the needs and capacities of vulnerable groups of society are timely identified, their capacities are also recognized, and all the decisions that are being made are risk-informed and inclusive vulnerable groups. For example, during the phase, we have the risk assessment and planning, preparedness, all the pre-disaster activities, response, immediate emergency management for responding to disasters, and during the phase of recovery, resilient recovery, restoration of infrastructure, and basic services. Vulnerable groups, as I said, I would like just to mention, tend to be excluded from DRR processes on a global level. It's not only the case here. And the process of DRR decision making, so they are becoming more exposed and vulnerable to disasters. They should be included in disaster risk reductions as agents of change to efficiently and equitably build resilience. Modus operandi for this is inclusion. On the other graph, we can see differences between inclusion and exclusion, separation and integration. In a very blind approach with the exclusions, they are completely beyond the processes of disaster risk reduction. If the approach of separation is being implemented, they are treated separately than the mainstream of disaster risk reduction, than the other parts of the society. And with the integration, they are integrated within the processes, but they are considered to be a cluster with a standalone approach. Contrary to this, I said that the risk reduction is a whole of society approach, is business of all citizens, all stakeholders within the society, and that is why we need the inclusion as a modus operandi, how to strengthen the resilience of vulnerable citizens. Principles of inclusive DRM can be creating a formal space to bring perspectives and priorities of all stakeholders, including at-risk groups, as mentioned, thinking about their needs from the very beginning, from the phase of prevention until the end, engaging and fostering leadership of all actors at all stages in order their voice to be raised and heard, and their needs to be adequately responsive in a timely and efficient manner, and to have a regular cooperation during the phases of the disaster risk reduction. One of the practical modality how this is being implemented on local level is so-called community-based disaster risk management, or in our context, it can be a municipal, locally based disaster risk management. And it is about creating a formal space to bring perspectives and priorities of all stakeholders, including at-risk groups, in disaster risk reduction. And it is a process which leads to all local appropriate and known strategies for disaster prevention, preparedness, and risk reduction, and calls for involvement of all members of communities throughout the disaster cycle. It is presented on the graph with all their respective capacities and as per their existing needs. For example, during the phase of mitigation and prevention, we should do a public education of the vulnerable groups. They have to be included into the hazard and vulnerability assessment. We have to provide an improved infrastructure as per their needs, as it was presented in the video. During the preparedness, they have to be part of the emergency response plans. They have to be included into the training exercises done by the municipal authorities. They have to be part of the early warning system and alerting. The response, emergency operation, property support, provision of adequate evacuation and shelters, and mass care for their special needs that can result from the event. And during the recovery, it's about providing the immediate economic recovery of the communities and the vulnerables because of their situation, level of vulnerability, adequate debris management, provision of temporary and continuous housing, health and social services in order to restore their well-being. Community principles of local level based disaster risk management can be a community is the main actor, the municipality in our context. Local resources are utilized, and that is why the risk reduction is a multi-hazard, multi-risk, and multi-sector process. Accordingly, all stakeholders are involved in an inclusive and participatory manner. We have a clear responsibilities for each group, each actor. Local level disaster risk management is linked to the development of the municipality, of local level sustainable development. There is a sustainability of actions because it's being done on a continuous basis. And the local level based disaster risk management should be human rights based approach, inclusive and participatory to vulnerable groups while leaving no one behind, as it was mentioned previously. So what are the local level actions? They can be during the phase of prevention, preparation of vulnerability assessment and capacities of the specific group that are identified on a local level through a multi-stakeholder approach by all the relevant municipal authorities, the risk and hazard department, civil protection, social services, health services. Integration of their assessments into the risk and hazard assessment of the municipality in order to be a part of the local level risk reduction, provision of structural and non-structural measures, strengthened structures for people, easy access for people with disabilities, with physical disability, then provision of structures for the citizens with impairment, adjustment of delivery of municipal services through a structural manner to these groups of citizens, non-structural measures like the provision of focused education on risk and hazards, professional education of the caregivers, of the health personnel or psychological personnel, and sensitization of civil protection forces with the aspects of vulnerability of citizens and sensibilization of social workers and other professional staffs with disaster risk reduction on local level, enhancement of financial investments for enabling resilience of vulnerable citizens in order to to diminish the potential impact of potential risk. Preparedness, creating of community early warning systems, include development of disaster preparedness plans with participation of representatives of with participation or inclusion of the vulnerable groups in order the sequence of action to be also targeting them during the phases of preparedness and response. Training and disasters drills in order to be included in order to have a coordinated approach by the municipal emergency services. Public alerting system, as it was shown in the video, to be for the needs of the people with disabilities, for example. Emergency operations to be customized in order to know where the vulnerable categories are, what kind of immediate response needs are needed for them, how to adjust the search and rescue operations for the needs of vulnerable citizens, and again during the phases of immediate recovery process to have actions targeted to them to establish their resilience as soon as possible, to do a needs assessment, what their needs for the recovery process, how to reestablish their lives, how to provide the counseling in ensuring their well-being, how to do a resilient recovery, build better in order their facilities, in order their environment not to be targeted by the disaster in the same way, and how to ensure access to income and employment as soon as possible after the disasters. I have 2 more slides. On these slides, I would like to present some of the practical measures that were taken in the region. For example, on the upper left side is the services facilities that are being provided for the people with for the vulnerable groups of categories. So then the emergency management services can link the relevant facilities and provision of services during the prevention, preparedness, and response. In the city of Skopje, we did the socioeconomic vulnerability of the citizens of Skopje, and through the evaluation of the Skopje city municipalities in order to see which municipality is most vulnerable to the impact of disasters. On the bottom of the slide, we have participatory vulnerability and capacity assessment as a part of the risk and hazard assessment, development of evacuation plans in Braille in order with the kids from the school in Skopje to have a evacuation that is facilitated by them through evacuation plans by the Braille, through tactile evacuation, inclusion of the needs of the citizens, especially the children and students, as a part of the training drill activities. And the last slide is this inclusive disaster risk management is linked to national alignment with the SDGs, especially the SDG target, SDG goal 11, and it is aligned with the Sendai framework to objectives to reduce mortality, to reduce the affected people as well to increase the number of nations and local authorities with the disaster risk reduction strategies. This is the last slide, and taking into consideration the situation of Corona. On the right side, you can see one traffic sign in the municipality of Žilina that is saying that nothing lasts forever, not even the coronavirus. But since during the phase of pandemic, we have to transform and adapt to ourselves to the new normality, taking into consideration how the situation not get worsened and how to support the vulnerable groups of citizens. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vasco, for giving us this very practical and illustrative presentation and examples. I think it gave us a better, let's say, overview of the topic, and I'm very interested to hear then how this approach is being implemented in practice. Today we have with us 2 practitioners coming from Albania and from Serbia. First, I will invite Ms. Eleana Jupaj, head of the Civil Protection Department of the municipality of Tirana, to share with us the experience of Tirana municipalities in managing the disasters. We mentioned the earthquake, so please, we are looking forward to hear how this approach is implemented in the reality with all the challenges and opportunities that you have faced.
Hello, I'm Eliana from Municipality of Tirana, Civil Protection Department for the financial support from consequences of the natural disaster. First of all, thank you for the invitation on this webinar and giving the possibility to share our experience, our problems and challenges in risk management. I would like to start with the presentation and to speak about the Tirana municipality and our challenges in risk management. Tirana has 27 administrative units, and 13 of them are rural administrative units, 14 urban administrative units. The most of the problem that we have are in administrative units. Risk management is difficult because of the problems and the management with landslides, especially in rural administrative units. As Tirana is the capital largest city in Albania by the area, and the population too is the largest city. Is high exposed to the disaster because of the problems that I said, landslide in some of the rural areas. And disaster risk management, I think that is a discipline that requires risk assessment at many levels. Disaster management deals with management of resources and information, and also is important to have the coordination between institutions, agencies, municipality authorities, and a well coordination between them. First of all, I want to say that the most important thing for risk management is the preparedness for the disaster and the risk reduction. The most important points is, I think, the determination of the evacuation facilities. So we have to know, first of all, the special facilities of evacuation in a case of natural disaster. It's important to identification the most risk areas that we have in 27 units. This is the most important. So if we know when we have or where we have the risk areas, so we will be easy to take measures and to reduce the risk from the disasters. Identifying the vulnerable groups. Also, the most important, I think, is the organization and simulation and exercises that we have organized with people, especially vulnerable groups, elders, and in the schools. Early warning system, communication and exchange information using the technology. About the problems that we had with the risk management, the most I mostly refer to the situation caused by the earthquake in 2019. November 26th. It was the strongest earthquake in 30 years in Albania. So it had the consequences of the earthquake. It caused not only damage in building infrastructure, but also physical, social, and economic problems. The most important lesson from our experience is to ensure the effective coordination between institutions and stakeholders. So the points are determine the stakeholders, establish the roles, and identify the elements. Intervention and management of the created situation from the earthquake and his consequences. The first aid and evacuation, it was important to be organized and coordinated with the social service department and medical emergency services in that situation. The coordination of work and division into groups of engineered band units was essential because, as I said, the territory of Tirana municipality is the largest in Albania by not only the area but also with the population. So 27 units. It was very difficult to manage the situation, the people, and the consequences that earthquake caused, not only in buildings, damaged building, but also psychological in people. So it was very important, the coordination between staff of social service department and medical emergency service. After the verification of the damage in a 2019 resulted that the damage of the buildings structure, it was the most damaged buildings that were built 60 or 70 years ago without technical conditions. Although it is impossible to prevent a disaster, I think it is also to be prepared for the disaster. That it means to identify the risk areas and the vulnerable groups that needs to monitoring the situation any time. Also, the information and sensibilization of the population. We can do this with exercises and simulation that in certain situations or training drills with staff of administrative unit in the municipality and also in the schools or with the other vulnerable groups of citizens as elderly. I think that our challenges in planning and implementing post-disaster recovery examines a good practice and reconstruction problem in building disaster resilience. Sometimes I think that the challenge identified by study or our experience, including the lack of capacity of quality on human resources, because I think that it's very important to have qualified human resources to act in a different natural disasters in different situations and to help people in this situation. The other problem, I think, and challenge is the gaps in legal framework. And the infrastructure is also a problem and a change in risk management for natural disaster. Difficulty in communication. In this case, one of the problem, difficulty in communication, I mean the problems with the people in a certain situation, in a disaster situation. Sometimes people does not believe or does not act with the situation. I think that it's very important that we have to create politics, new politics, or to improve the politics to make them trust in this and act in time in a certain situation. About the recovery and reconstruction process can enable communities to build back to more resilient standards, establish new system at the local and national level to protect against similar adverse natural events. And also by providing an enabling environment for compliance with build back better standards, the project results a lot of buildings, new houses to be more seismic resistant constructions. As I said, it was the most bad experience, the consequences of the earthquake, but also after the earthquake of November 26th, a few months later, it was another disaster as pandemic. Pandemic situation, it was also caused a lot of consequences too, not as in Albania as in all of countries, in many levels, social and economic fields. So the most vulnerable groups affected was elderly, the old people that was most affected by this disaster. It was very important and necessary to take measure to support this category of citizens and reduce the effects of disasters, helping them and create new politics to support in this situation. About these pictures, it are our intervention and taking measure for the people with shelters in case of the earthquake, where they can't in that time they couldn't live in their houses because they were destroyed and they weren't safe in their houses. So it was impossible that all that people in that moment to shelter in a social services or so we tried to find we tried to help them with tents near their houses because the most of them didn't want to leave their houses. So with tents, they for the moment we could solve the problems and solve only for the moment, because the most important thing in that situation was the support, physical, not only physical but psychological too. These pictures here are the problems that we had about 3 weeks ago from the landslide in some rural areas because of the heavy rain, and it caused especially in that time in certain rural areas.
Thank you very much, Ms. Jupai, for this interesting presentation of practical examples through practical cases, unfortunate circumstances. but then what your municipality did. I appreciate that you also reflected on some of the challenges that we can further discuss in the panel. We already have questions from the participants in the Q&A section. Again, on the bottom of your screen, you will see the taskbar with the Q&A. You will see the questions. I will make sure to bring all of those questions in the panel discussion after we hear the presentations. And now from Tirana, we will go to Kraljevo in Serbia, where we will hear from Mr. Zdravko Maksimovic, also head of Civil Protection Department at the municipality of Kraljevo. And we are also looking forward to hear your experience on the ground with handling, integrating the needs of the vulnerable groups in the disaster risk management. Mr. Maksimovic, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I have some problem with video.
It is probably because you are from two devices in the participating in the event, so that's probably is causing the phonia. So if you
okay, can you hear me?
Yes, now it's okay. We just cannot see you. If you can turn on also your camera.
I'm going to. You cannot start your video because the host has disabled it. Sorry.
Uh-huh.
I can host.
So we have to enable your
yes,
camera.
Sorry for this. Just a short introduction. Start my video. Yes. Thank you.
Now we can also see you.
Sorry for these technical problems, and
it happens, no problem.
Please excuse me, and thank for you and Boran for helping me in this presentation. My name is Zdravko Maksimovic, and I am head of Department for Civil Protection in the city of Kraljevo. And I want to say thank you for the opportunity to speak today, and please excuse me maybe for my bad English. My department actually is a part of local city administration, and it is a main link in the chain of disaster risk management, not just in city of Kraljevo, but also for 18 local self-governments in West Morava River Basin. As a colleague from Tirana pointed, civil protection is maybe the most important segment of disaster risk management on local, regional, and national level. In going forward, I'm going to, instead of using disaster risk management, I'm going to use just the words civil protection. We can go next slide, if it's possible. How we include vulnerable group in our work, and that I think was the question in this sector of Q&A, this part of our Zoom platform. Actually, there are two ways of including these vulnerable groups. I think Vasco mentioned something about levels of vulnerability. Yes, maybe it's a better word, sensitivity of people on disasters. You know. Firstly, as we approach to vulnerable group of our community as someone who needs help or assistance in a time of crisis. At other words, in terms of risk assessment, yes, as protected values. And secondly, they are actually our partners in everyday work. Yes, all these activities and approaches were and still, I think, are very and especially important in the time of the COVID-19 pandemic. We can go on next slide to see some of our work. Yes, actually, this is a results of our work. How we make differences. First, through the process of drafting documents such as risk assessment, rescue plans, post-disaster need assessment, some reports after disaster, etc., etc. And through the different presentation, it's not just a document or this risk assessment normative part, but we need to present our results, our documents by using, I don't know, platforms like GIS or Google Earth or Google Maps, some other applications. And what we can use and what we are available to use in the context of presenting risk assessment and rescue plans to not just to vulnerable groups, but to the public. We can go on next slide. Based on the experience from previous disaster like earthquake, Kraljevo had earthquake 2010, floods, every year we have floods for 7 years, in a row we have floods, forest fires, storms, snow drifts. The awareness of population is created and the need for some kind of organization, and that organization of our community is actually organization through the system of civil protection. We have successfully established a network of commissioners of civil protection and deputy of commissioners of civil protection on the whole territory of city of Kraljevo. That is most biggest territory by area in our country. Today, they are very important part of and partners of every institution that have that dealing with some disaster risk assessment or protecting people and property, or protecting maybe and dealing with critical infrastructure and the environment. Vulnerable groups or sensitive groups of our community have taken an active part in the formation of the civil protection system. We can go on next slide. Now it's something more about training and how we involve public in our work. Actually, for that purpose, we establish a regional center for training of civil protection commissioners, and not just commissioners, it's open for public, and it's located on a place called Rudno near Kraljevo. Actually, we established an intermunicipal corporation. I have mentioned at the starting of this my presentation, at the start of my presentation, that is a corporation of 18 cities and municipalities in West Morava River Basin, and this corporation is based on joint activities in relation to joint disaster or risk assessment. And this type of organization of the system has, found support in all national and international institutions or organizations of importance for these topics. We can go on next slide. Civil protection is in everyday activity, not only at the time of crisis or when a disaster is happening, but also preventively in peacetime conditions. I take this opportunity to highlight some of activities that we are continuously or currently conducted here on territory of our city of Kraljevo. But in the same time, they are topic of today webinar. It's I don't know, project small civil protection. That project is aimed at students and teachers at schools and preschools, making or drafting a disaster risk assessment for the city of Kraljevo, drafting plans for rescue for city of Kraljevo, training for commissioners of and deputy of commissioners and members of civil protection, especially in schools and kindergartens, formation of women's section in voluntary fire society, evacuation exercise drills in schools. And this activity is very important because this year, first time, we are going to have a joint civil protection drill in every school in Serbia. You know, it's going to be 5-minute drill, and it's going to, be produced just from teachers and kids. We are going just to watch, them in drill of evacuation in the I don't know, case of some emergency like fire or earthquake. It's very important that people or these people who is working with people with disabilities or some kind of needs know how to react before firemen, show in front of them. It's 5 minutes, but it's life-saving 5 minutes. And I'm going to send, an invitation for all Southeast Europe region to join, on this day. It's going to happen on 13th of October. It's International Day of risk I don't know, management or something like that, okay, risk reduction. And it's very important that we provide this kind of activities in the same time, to see our capacity. And we have a good relation with non-government organization that's very important for this topic. And I'm going to just point one organization called Phenomena. They are somebody who is dealing with women's rights, not just on our territory of city of Kraljevo, but in all our country. And we are like 4 or 5 years together in different kind of activities, and we are really appreciate them for everything they are doing for us and for citizens here. Okay, we can go on next slide. Through all of these activities and our willingness and trying just need to improve our work, we have successfully connected with many partners on international, national, regional, and local level. On international level, you can just click next slide. I'm going to mention some of them, like Deltares, UNDP, GFDRR, World Bank, JICA, Caritas, FAO. There are so many of them. On national level, you can go on the next slide. We have good cooperation with all ministries from, I don't know, local self-government, environment, sector for emergency situation, but also with public investment management office. They are like first in this DRR context when you are speaking about Serbia. And the standing conference of towns and municipality, I think they are part of this NALAS organization. Yes. Okay, we can go on next slide. On regional level, I mentioned earlier, we have a good cooperation with 18 cities and municipalities, local self-government in this part of Serbia. And I think this is very important to share not just experience, but our resources to not just to react, but to predict and to plan, you know, everything. It's very important that we don't, you know, stay locked down in our office, but to go out and to reach for some answers for our problems, you know, and different situations. Okay, we can go next slide. And the local level, what is most important for us for maybe everyday work, we just established a good cooperation with all public firms, private companies. That's very important for this kind of activities. If we are speaking about civil protection or disaster risk management, but also with non-government organizations and of course with citizens. Okay, we can go next or final slide. Okay, what to say at the end, you know, I'm going to quote just one sentence from, actually that's two sentences from the novel of famous Hemingway, Old Man and the Old Man and the Sea. It's go like this, but man is not made for defeat, he said. A man can be destroyed, but not defeated. Please visit our website, and thank you and all the best.
Thank you very much, Mr. Maksimovic. And we already have in the chat praise for your work. And our participants have pointed out how important it is also to invest in the right people in the municipalities who can actually then make all this great work that that you are doing in your municipality. And now it's time for a short break. We are already a little bit behind the agenda, but I believe that you all enjoyed the contribution of our speakers as I did. So we will have, I think, 8 minutes break, and then we will come back with the panel, where we will try in a bit shorter time to cover all the questions that you have already posed in the Q&A section. There are very interesting practical questions that I would really love to bring back to our panelists, Vasko, Eleana, and Zdravko. So I see you in 8 minutes. Inclusive disaster risk management. I hope you had a little bit of time to make a fresh cup of coffee or tea, or just stretch around your office or your home. So I will invite again our speakers today, Vasko, Eleana, and Zdravko, to join me with their cameras and microphones, and to continue the discussion on the inclusive disaster risk management. We already have several questions, and I will combine them with the questions that we already had prepared for the panel because they are very complementary, and encourage the rest of the participants to also pose their questions that we can bring to our panelists today. So the first kind of set of questions relates to the specifics of the vulnerable groups and their needs. So Zdravko and Eleana, how are you as municipalities identifying what are the vulnerable categories, and is there a danger that we overly generalize this vulnerability, that we say all women equally or all children equally vulnerable? Like, how do you ensure that you properly identify who are the vulnerable groups that need a particular attention in the planning?
Okay, who is going to speak first?
You can go ahead, Zdravko.
To break ice. Okay, thank you for this question, and it's something that's connected with your skills, you know, just to recognize not just the groups, but the way to solve, you know, this kind of problem. Actually, here we have social institutions, different local public institution that is dealing with matter of people with some kind of needs or vulnerable group of people. It's not just sick and all, but it can be, you know, poor or something like that. And at the other hand, we have like non-government organization who is dealing with issues or problems of these groups of people or parts of our community. And on the in the other hand, we have every year we have some kind of disaster actually, and you know, that's just go from down to from bottom to you know, up, and we can recognize influence of disaster on different categories of our citizens, and just to recognize who needs help more, or who needs, you know, care more, or protecting more, or some kind of tips or instruction. But I mentioned that those people and their representatives are part of our everyday work, not just when we are drafting our documents, but actually they are part of civil protection. You know, they are commissioners of civil protection on the field. They are members of units of civil protection, and we have like everyday communication. Sometimes we can solve problems very fast, but sometimes we need more time and more partners to be involved in solving some kind of problems they have.
Thank you, Zdravko. Eleana, is it similar in the municipality of Tirana, or you also implement some other approaches?
Yes, of course, it's a little bit similar because the most important thing, I can say that it's difficult to prevent a disaster, but it's important to preparing. How can we prepare to reduce the consequences of the disaster, or to reduce the impact of the disaster? We implement or we trying to implement the politics and the measure takings to reduce this impact. So first of all, I think that it's important the communication and the coordination between units, 27 administrative units in municipality of Tirana, and the members of these units. The coordination of the information in time. It's very important, the coordination in time, and the information, exchange information between us. it's important to identify the risk areas, because not only not all the sections of the population are at risk, and not only section of these units are risk from the disaster. For example, in rural areas, we have several problems with soil erosion, landslides. So it's important that we know and identify these risk points in these areas, to monitoring the situation all the time, to exchange information with the member of the units. And of course, the most important thing is to sensibilization of the people that live here, that have their houses, to give them the information and to inform about the risk that we'll have.
And Eliana, do you also, because now you mentioned this aspect of actually engaging with the vulnerable groups in the planning, do you also involve them in the planning, like when you do the plan, so that you take into consideration their needs? Do you have also this discussion beyond information, but also engaging?
Yes, of course. Yes, they are in within the disaster relief management plan, of course. And sometimes when the situation is more problematic, we try to improve the politics to help them sometimes when they can be homeless, when the problem, when their homes are really uninhabitable.
Yeah. Thank you, Vasco. You would like to add maybe additional approach or insight into identification of the vulnerable groups and engaging with them?
I just want to point that the vulnerability is multidimensional, because one of the questions was whether all women and children are vulnerable, so how to differentiate? As per the approach, the women and children, youth, elderly, people with disabilities, they are per se vulnerable. But also within this overall vulnerability, we have additional layers of vulnerability, meaning that level of poverty, level of access to services. So when we are want to include them as a part of the process, or when we are making the policies and plans and actions and measures as per their needs and capacities, we also have to have this into consideration. So what are the additional layers of vulnerability below the general approach? So how can we, as a DRM agencies on national and local level, how the response should be customized in order to reach everyone in the community? So colleagues from Tirana and Kraljevo mentioned the very valuable approach on the local level. So I would just like to mention that the main point should be the databases in the registries of population, whether it will be the census or the other registries from social protection services, from social affairs, from additional municipal departments. So that is the starting point, how to collect and disaggregate data on the peoples, on the citizens that are vulnerable within the territory of the municipality. Good example is, for example, from North Macedonia, is that within the municipal risk and hazard assessment, there is a separate annex on people with disabilities, where, for example, in the municipality of Strumica, there is a registry made as per the data protection framework. So the groups of various disabilities are identified and the citizens are listed in order the emergency management services to be fully aware where something is happened, or how to include them in preventive actions or in preparedness, or how to include them within the scope of the immediate response to disasters.
Thank you, Vasco. And just to add on what you are saying, for those that participated in the previous webinars, you will be also familiar that we were discussing the social mapping. So this type of exercises are also excellent in mapping the different vulnerable groups and their specific vulnerabilities also related to the disasters, vulnerabilities to disasters, so that it can be then fed into the plan, which brings me to the next question that is related to the stakeholder. But I mean, I believe, and there was a question in the Q&A section, how your departments cooperate with the civil servants in the municipalities that are responsible for civil protection. So how do you cooperate with them in identifying and integrating the vulnerable groups into the inclusive disaster risk management? And it's for all of you, maybe from the practice first, if Eleana and Zdravko can mention what is the cooperation there.
Okay. I have already in my presentation, just recognize this very important part of cooperation on different levels, yes, of decision makers, yes, not just on national and international. And I'm going just to add to what Vasko said. Okay, locals are very important, but international organization like UR and UNDP and World Bank and FAO can, help us so much that it's very important that they are actively there with us on topics that are important for not just for vulnerable group, but for risk assessment and everything, for all DRR management. And for your question, I'm going just to answer that we establish a good cooperation. Sometimes it's like some kind of contract for exchanging, information, data, or something. And sometimes it's just our, good cooperation between different people from different organizations, different institutions. And what's very important, we just push on every director in private or public firm or schools everywhere, in every company, enterprise, to give us a name of commissioners of civil protection in their firms, and we are in that way. We want just to involve them in our system of civil protection. And when we have people who is in charge for some kind of exchanging information or dealing with the matter of DRM or civil protection, then we have address for our questions, or we have, just a good partners for dealing with all scientific question for civil protection. And I think that's a good way, just to have this institutional framework. It's not just normative, but we need institutional framework for acting. Okay.
Thank you, Zdravko. And Eleana, do you have direct cooperation with your colleagues that work on social protection in this aspect of vulnerable groups?
Yeah, yes, of course. It's as I said, it's important that the coordination, an effective coordination between the institution, agencies, or the social services. It's necessary, first of all, to determine all the key of stakeholders in a certain situation. So to establish the roles, to communicate and exchange information all the time in a certain situation or in a disaster situation, and identify the basic elements and the implementation, and the measure takings in reduce the impact of disaster. it is also the communication with other part of the social services that we have to make sometimes a phone call in that moment, so we can be more effective, I think, and more quickly.
Thank you. Vasco, can you also contribute to what Zdravko and Eliana were talking about, engaging with different stakeholders? We had this question also in the quiz, right, about the different roles. We saw also how the private companies can be engaged. Can you also reflect on this aspect of coordination with the different stakeholders, and in particular within the municipality with the designated personnel for social protection?
Yes, disaster risk management, as I said, is all of society approach, and it is a multi-stakeholder initiative and process with the involvement of all the stakeholders that are present at the local level. So maybe good examples from the other parts of the region, Europe or globally, are, for example, using the local or sub-regional platforms for disaster risk reduction, where all the stakeholders are being part. Whether in particular in working modality, the process of multi-risk, multi-hazard, multi-stakeholder assessment as an entry point to the prevention cycle of disaster preparedness should not be detached from other aspects of local government. So the personnel, the cooperation, collaboration with social departments should start there, from the, as we mentioned, from the point of collection of disaggregated data on the vulnerable groups of citizens, and through the integration, joint integration within the assessment, risk and hazard profiling, exposure, all the steps of evaluation of the risks. So there should be a frequent interaction, because these systems are not detached and they are part of one integrated system for disaster risk management. Private sector, again, can provide valuable input with provision of additional data. For example, there are private sector companies that are employing people with disabilities. Yeah. So we have to be, the municipal authorities have to be fully aware of the emergency services, how to operate, how to respond, for example, during the weekend time or during the working part of the week, where the people with disabilities are employed in different companies across the municipality, or they can provide additional connection to their resources and databases. Also the educational institutions, academia. So practically this is a complex network of stakeholders, and every step has to be taken in an inclusive and participatory approach, and guided by the relevant department of the municipality, so to ensure that all of them will be on this resilient journey from the very beginning until the very end.
Thank you, Vasco. And just to bring on board to Eliana and Zdravko, a question that we have from Mr. Dusan Todorovic, whether you have councils for cooperation with civil society organizations in your municipalities that you can coordinate with in relation to this aspect.
Yeah.
Just brief. Yes, no.
yeah, and I think very important organization on the local level for this topic is Red Cross. They are doing a great job with this kind of activities and people, and they are very, very good for this kind of work.
Eliana, do you also have
if I may,
this kind of council for cooperation with CSOs that you coordinate with, and especially on the engagement of vulnerable groups?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Vasco,
I just wanted to connect to the statement of Zdravko. Yes, the municipal organization of Red Crescent are the most valuable partner of the civil protection agencies on local level. and most of them, they are implementing their own vulnerability and capacity assessments of the community, so they have a very reliable and verifiable set of indicators and data on the vulnerability of the community.
And good network.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you all for the contribution. Let me bring another question from the participants from the Q&A. What is the opinion of the municipalities of Tirana and Kraljevo? So this is a question for Eleana and Zdravko on the UNDRR Make My City Resilient campaign. If you're familiar with the campaign.
Yes, I'm familiar. Actually, I think, and I said it's very important to have this kind of activities, initiatives, because it's not just like some kind of I don't know, prizes or something you are going to get on the end of these projects and something, but it's a good tool for mobilizing, community, public, to create awareness for these topics, because in peaceful time, actually, many of us are alone, and just trying to achieve something, but in peaceful time, nobody is or so few people are just interesting for this kind of topic, but actually that's our time, when accident or disaster is happening, that we are late with action,
If you're ready for action.
Yes, we can just see and maybe to protect something, but actually our time is time before disaster, and I think we just need more quantity and quality work and to just reach this emptiness, to fill this emptiness. And it's very important. I need just to say this. Civil protection here in city of Kraljevo is a kind of bridge between city administration and citizens. And that's very important, to just fill these gaps to reach, to citizens, because we are administration, people doesn't love administration and bureaucracy, but actually civil protection is a very good tool to connect with people, to recognize their needs and when and where to act.
Thank you, Zdravko and Vasko. In the meantime, for those of you who are not familiar with Make My City Resilient campaign, Vasko has shared the link in the chat so you can look at it. Eleana, is this campaign something that you see your municipality engage with, useful?
I don't know, but I wanted to continue what Zdravko said before, that in some certain situation, when we have plans, we identify potential threats, create write-in action plan to reduce and for preparedness. But when disaster happens, it's completely different. What we can write in an action plan, of course, it helps, but it's totally different, I think.
Thank you, Elena. I have another question for Zdravko, and there it's kind of an introduction to this last section of questions related to the challenges. So Zdravko, there is a specific question. What is the civil protection budget for city of Kraljevo, tentatively? And then I would add on this, for all of you, where do you see the biggest challenges in implementing this inclusive disaster risk management? So Zdravko, let's talk a bit about the money.
Little bit of money, yes. Okay, actually we don't have a special budget for civil protection this year. and last year and few years, but we are doing so many projects with our partner, and I need to mention just a project that we're running now with Public Investment Management Office and UNDP, financed by EU. That is establishment or is better word to increase, capacity of civil protection in West Morava River Basin, and it's a lot of money that is going to be, just give to uniforms, to reconstruction of our regional center, for trainings, and I think trainings is very important. You have like this platform for training, and I see that you are just typing these links, and it's very important to train so many people we can, because somebody is going to just be fished on the hook and to be more interested for these topics. I think that actually we don't have money as we deserve, but okay. If you want honest answer, our budget is 0.
So that's probably also one of the challenges, especially in terms of planning. If you don't have budgets.
Yes, it's challenge, but okay.
But obviously, still you manage to successfully.
Actually, Nikita, it's one of the gaps I mentioned.
Yes.
Financial gap, and that's what it is, because everyone wants to, finance just emergency situation when it's happening,
When it happens, yes.
Yes, but prevention and these kind of activities, But okay, we are managing, and I'm appreciated for to private firms here in Kraljevo, because they recognize that we are very honest with all we are doing, and actually they are paying for some costs we have, to time, and I'm really happy to have this kind of support. It's not just when you have. Sorry, I need just to answer more. If it's not just when you have a public money, it's like, okay, you didn't earn that. That is budget, and you are going to just spend this for some kind of activities. I'm hoping good activities, But when you have private money, which is which is there for you, then it's earned, and you have obligation more for spending, and how you spend it, and that's like some kind of just prize for me and for my civil protection here in Kraljevo, because private firm wants to pay, our costs.
Thank you, Zdravko. Vasco, can you reflect on, from your knowledge, what are some of the challenges that municipalities face in implementing this approach? We hear the scarce resources is obviously one of the pressing issues. Can you reflect, please, on, in your experience, what are some of the challenges? And how we can, of course, mitigate them and address them properly.
Actually, the assessment of the COVID-19 impact on the delivery of municipal services, financial aspects and crisis management at local level show that, for example, for protection and rescue services on the municipal level, which is kind of a civil protection services, in Macedonia, annual volume of money that are budgeted in all the municipalities is decreasing, I'm excluding the firefighting services. For example, 2 years ago, it was approximately 400,000 euro to 81 municipalities, which is nothing, which is one peanut. Another problem is that, as Zdravko mentioned, the system, it's still in most of the countries reactive. It is focused on the preparedness, it is focused on the response. Whether the prevention and preparedness, it's not taken sufficiently into consideration. And we are still considering municipalities to be first responders. But as Zdravko and Eliana mentioned in their statements and presentations, the municipalities should be first preventers.
Absolutely.
Because as per the UNDRR, $1 in prevention saves $7 in response and recovery. Another challenge that was shown during the COVID-19 impact surveys was that the municipality, there is a need of additional decentralization of services on municipal and local level. Because especially during the COVID, municipalities, they didn't have all the available measures and actions that can be implemented on local level. So they are still, for example, in my country, the system is still strongly centralized, the crisis management, for example, and there is a strong vertical hierarchy. In the case of municipality, if we want to fulfill a real and full-scale inclusivity of the citizens, then this competency should be additionally decentralized, follow up with additional sustainable source of financial resources, either through the municipal budget, through state budget, cross-border cooperation, EU budget, or any other source. But contrary to this, during the COVID-19 impact, the emergency services performed significant level of transformability and adaptability, even though the civil protection was not main main body that responded to COVID-19 impact. It was the health authorities, but on the ground, all the activities were performed by above 90% were performed by the civil emergency services, like disinfections, like supply, because they have resources, and they are resources number one on the local authority.
Thank
you,
I
think
Vasco.
That we need another station, another webinar to discuss the challenges.
Yeah, but I think it's an important recommendation for advocacy from NALAS and the member associations to advocate for more resources to be allocated to the municipalities for prevention and preparedness rather and to have a proper budgeting to ensure that the municipalities can be then more responsive to the needs of especially to the vulnerable groups. Eliana, would you like to add something on what Zdravko and Vasco were saying? And I have a particular question on the that we previously discussed on the making cities resilient, that apparently Tirana municipality, along with two other, I think, municipalities assigned to be part of the campaign, but you said that you're not familiar, so but please feel free to address any of the challenges that were mentioned by Vasco and Zdravko.
Yes, I can say the same. The challenges, sometimes the challenges identified by studying on by our experience include the lack of capacity in human resources, and especially the capacity in qualified human resources that is very important in risk management disaster, to have qualified human resources, and also the gaps in legal framework. So I think it's important to create to improve the politics that we have, write an action plan that we have, but also to create new politics and to recovery from the consequences. About the budget, I wanted to add that these 2 years, we had the largest budget compared with the other years because of the consequences that we had from the earthquake damage in a very big number of the buildings from earthquakes. So we are trying to complete with Build Back Better, as I said in the presentation, and the projects that will rebuild new houses meeting seismic resistant construction requirements.
Mhm. Thank you very much, Eleana. And just to bring the comment from the chat from Yasminka Kochankovska, that without budget, it seems like crisis management in continuation. Just to kind of wrap up this part of the discussion. Yeah. And we have another contribution from the city of Kruševac, where they mention on the issue of stakeholders that they have included also organizations and associations of people with disabilities and Roma associations as well, to make sure that they are properly addressing the needs of the particular vulnerable groups for the development of immunization plan, particularly with Roma and people with disabilities. So just a contribution to your discussion. Yeah. And here I would like to wrap up this panel, because we are already at the end of the discussion, because I also have a question for Nalas. And I will ask Boran to join us to the panel. Thank you very much, Eleana, Vasco, and Zdravko, for your lively and valuable discussion in the panel. I think it unraveled also additional aspects of this issue, and will encourage our participants to join the e-learning course. You saw the link for early sign up, so feel free to sign up for the e-learning course. Boran, discussing the course and the capacity building of the municipalities, we have question in the Q&A section for you, whether there has been some training needs assessment for the municipalities in the area of disaster risk management. Do we know what the municipalities need in this regard?
Actually, talking about these specific topics, there is no training needs assessment conducted already, but we consider from the previous experience and in communication with our member associations that inclusive disaster risk management is topic that is needed, is necessary, is requested by the municipal representatives, and as it was already several times mentioned, it's a multidisciplinary action at the local level, so which includes not only the people who are responsible for the disaster risk management activities at local level, but also I would say the civil servants dealing with the social affairs, especially talking about the vulnerability aspect of this disaster risk management. So this intervention at the local level should be considered, as I said, as a multidisciplinary, and it should be involving many civil servants coming from different local competencies, from different departments covering different competencies. So no exact TNA, training needs assessment, but the needs is coming from the field and the reflection of our member associations.
Thank you very much, Boran. So can we hear then from you what are the next steps in terms of the program, the e-learning, the other opportunities for the municipalities to engage related to this issue and the other social approaches?
Yes, actually, I would try to be very short and to explain what are the next opportunities for the participants, but also for their municipalities. We are talking here about the social approaches and scaling up of the social approaches. Having this in mind, these are the 5 social approaches we are working on in the frame of our project, where actually we would like to scale up the already collected experience in these 5 topics. So we're talking about the daycare centers, awareness raising about the human rights of the vulnerable groups at local level, establishment of the mobile outreach teams, social dialogue forums, and the topic we discussed today, inclusive disaster risk management. These five topics, as I said, already implemented, will be scaled up, and for these purposes within the project, we actually would like to introduce, or we are already introducing, some capacity development measures. This is the last fifth webinar in the series of webinars. So now we are shifting from the I would say informing and promoting of the approaches to the more deeply learning about the project, the approaches, by conducting delivery of the e-learning courses. So for each of these five social approaches, we are in the stage of development of the e-learning courses. That the delivery will start, as I said in the very beginning of the webinar, at 6th of April, with the first topic, establishment of daycare centers. Then also I will provide more information on the last slide about the calendar of these courses delivery. Then besides the e-learning courses, we would like to provide to the municipalities who would like to implement one of these social approaches, a technical assistance for that. So we will provide a modest grant for technical assistance for those municipalities that would like to apply one of these social approaches in their territories. And also in terms of the capacity development, we will provide them a practical peer-to-peer exchange through learning clusters that will be established by each of our member associations in the project target economies. Then the second part of the support is actually we would like to provide training, the knowledge for the implementation of the methodology for social mapping in the municipalities, and this is necessary for the evidence-based planning and decision-making at local level. So actually the training has already started 2 days ago, and it will last 3 weeks. Pilot municipalities already selected by our member associations in the Western Balkans are already in the training, and they will have an opportunity together with the local NGOs and consultancy companies to conduct social mapping and to identify the basic needs and to identify the vulnerable groups within their municipalities necessary for development of the local policies on social protection. And then the third group or package of activities that we are supporting our members and their municipalities is related to the COVID situation. So we provide rapid measures for socio-economic recovery of municipalities. Last year, we provided for 10. Now we will provide grants, small grants for 15 municipalities in the Western Balkans to mitigate the effects, aftermath of the COVID-19 crisis. And the last slide is something that I would like to use to take this opportunity actually and to invite you all to apply for the e-learning courses that will be delivered in accordance with this calendar. I'm presenting here, as I said, 6th of April is starting point for the first daycare center, establishment of daycare centers. The e-learning courses are actually free of charge. They will be in English language, and all of our experts present during the webinars, they will actually facilitating the upcoming e-learning courses. So I would like to encourage you, this is my last message to all of you, to follow the activities of our member associations or your associations of local governments in the next coming period, because everything what we are going to implement on the field is announced, implemented and coordinated with their capacities. So please take this into consideration, because this is not only the training are not only the part for your personal development, but also the municipalities that will have representatives who will successfully finish the e-learning courses. They will be eligible to apply for the grants for technical assistance for the implementation of the social approaches. So the benefit is twofold. It's a personal development for your career development, but also there is a opportunity for the municipalities to improve the situation in the local social protection service delivery. This is my last sentence, and also I would like to extend my gratitude to all of you for being with us for almost 2 hours and more, actually 3 hours. But also I would like to extend my gratitude to the interpreters who were together with us for all these 5 webinars supporting us in the spreading the word in the local languages. Thank you very much, and keep in touch.
Thank you very much, Boran, and you're right. The interpreters are those that are working without a break throughout these 5 webinars. So thank you very much for your valuable contribution to the webinar. And we already have in the chat positive responses to the experience that we have shared in this webinar. I apologize to some of you who wanted to share your experience directly to the audience in the panel. As we said at the beginning, the webinar is structured in a way that doesn't allow us to directly include you with your microphones open. So we brought to the panel whatever was in the chat. But as I said, and as Boran mentioned, this will not be the last opportunity. Obviously, this is a topic that is very relevant for all municipalities in the region. So there will be additional opportunities for sharing the experience and for learning more on these issues. So your contribution and participation is very much appreciated. So thank you all again for being patient, even though we a little bit went over the timing for the agenda, but I think it was very interesting, very practical discussion. And I invite you all to join us at the next activities within the project. I wish you very good, productive, and joyful rest of the week, and see you in some of the next events and activities within this and other projects of NALAS. Goodbye.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.